everyone, please join me in welcoming Mayor Nathan Pachal.
Thank you so much for being here. I think I might need to update that blog about me section probably. So I'm supposed to introduce myself, but I think you already know who I am. Let's see if this is going to work as well. Oh, hey, it just automatically came up. So we're going to do our State of the City address, and we want to talk about the Citizens Assembly. So there's two things I talked to you folks about last year. One was our KPI dashboard, and one's the Citizens Assembly. I just wanted to give you an update on where we're at. So before we get into that, I just want to give you a brief overview about what a Citizens Assembly actually is. So in our context, it's Langley City residents and business owners that have been participated in a lottery. We selected 29 of them out of about 200 entries that represent a cross-section of our community based on age, gender, ethnicity, neighborhoods, and the types of business. So the Citizens Assembly was created by our council to really look at what they call wicked issues, or really complicated issues that we haven't been able to move the needle on for the past little while. And we know that community safety is a challenge in Langley City and indeed other municipalities throughout BC. We know the current approaches aren't working and we need to do something different. And the best way to do something different is when you actually tap into the knowledge of the people that live in your community and the people that own businesses in your community. So we believe we can move the needle when we put community members at the center of the decision-making process. And that's because they're not as susceptible to the status quo. And one of the things you may learn when you're in government is there's a lot of pressure to just keep things the way they are and not actually do change. And we know that we need systemic change. And I remember our CAO told me there's 3 things that you need to be aligned: your council, your staff, and your community. And we believe that the Citizens Assembly is how we accomplish that. So I think I'm going to play, or someone's going to play a video about the experience of some of the members of our Citizens Assembly, why they chose to be on it, what the experience has been like so far, and what they're hoping to see.
The Citizens Assembly, it's like a big group project where we all come together and we discuss ideas about how to solve public safety. We discuss the pros, we discuss the cons, and after that's done, we present it to the City Council.
They're here, City Council is here, we're in between, and can we take their concerns? Because there's a lot of citizens out there. They have problems, and when you start asking them solutions, they got some good solutions.
I'm cautiously optimistic about what could come out of the Citizens Assembly. Many of the issues that we're discussing are multi-pronged.
Well, I decided to participate in the Citizens Assembly because I feel it's more impactful to be here helping out.
I think it's really important that people from all walks of life in Langley City can have the chance to participate in something like the Citizens Assembly, because it means that we're having real direct input into the decision-making process.
It's been a great experience to see the 29 sitting here in the room, the 29 Assembly members, and particularly when I looked around the room and I could see an academic sitting next to the chef and a pensioner sitting next to a 20-year-old. And there's a resident that's been in the city most of his life, and he's sitting beside a young father who's lived in the city for 1 year.
In our everyday lives, we don't always feel like we can necessarily make a difference, other than voting every few years. But this is a way that I feel like I really have a chance to have my voice heard, no matter the outcome.
And I think it's about engagement of the citizens. I think it's about how we develop community cohesiveness. I think it's about involvement, inclusiveness.
And I'd really hope that from seeing what comes out of the Citizens Assembly and from participating in the forums, that we have a citizenship that starts to become more engaged. There's lots of opportunities to get involved, and I think the more that you have people involved, the stronger and more vital your community becomes.
The one thing I hope the most that comes out of this is that people look back on what we've done and they go, damn, they did a really good job.
So it was really good to hear from those folks. So as you can gather, they have been meeting over the last few months. They've been hearing from experts, they've been hearing from people in the community as well. So the Assembly is working together with some other initiatives that the city has going on. So earlier we've worked on a Village Cafe series, so that's meeting people where they're at. So we've had little pop-ups at our parks and in other places where typically people gather. It is actually really intimidating for a lot of folks to go to a city hall or participate in a formal engagement. People are very busy as well, you all know that, so we're really trying to meet people where they're at. So the Citizens Assembly is being fed by, again, experts and by our community, which is really important. The Assembly is actually going to be making their recommendations to Council this fall, but before they do that, we're going to have another sort of opportunity for public input on the recommendations they'll put forward that Council will ultimately endorse. So like I said, Langley City Council is all about how we can engage with our community in a meaningful way and hear from them because, again, we believe that the best decisions come from those when we include the whole community. So beyond the Citizens Assembly and the Village Cafe series, we've also been hosting a series of community dialogues. That's for folks, so we got a lot of expression of interest, like I said, on posts that wanted to be part of this. Everybody couldn't be involved, but we do want to allow that opportunity. So I think last week we had about, I would say, 40 people that attended a dialogue series. Again, the Community Citizens Assembly was there, hearing from them and just hearing from their ideas. And we're going to host another one in the fall. So beyond that, we also have online opportunities as well. I'm going to share it at the end of the presentation. And since you're the business community here, we'd really like to get your feedback as well. So you're going to get your phones out and do that survey for us before the middle of July. So I want to say that the Citizens Assembly, again, just to sort of finish it up, is really about inclusive community building. So the next thing I talked about was a KPI dashboard, and I think I promised you all that there would be a live dashboard. And then we had a conversation that when you try to do live demos, they never work at these things, so we thought we'd just do an actual static slide, and you can look it up later. So just for those who don't know, a KPI is a key performance indicator, and it helps drive alignment in organizations. If you work in the private sector, it's very, very common, and you're seeing that a lot more in the public sector as well. So the KPIs, again, at a high level, just helps connect those strategic objectives of council and our major plans, like our transportation plan and parks plans, right down to the department level outcomes that we want people to achieve. The dashboard is to make sure that the work that our staff is doing is measurable and it's transparent and it aligns with what we want to see. It's primarily a tool, actually, for our city staff, but it does have the benefit of being put online so that it's accessible to the whole community so that we're holding ourselves accountable. So we're doing this because we believe that the best decisions, besides being community-led, are also data-driven. A lot of times in government, we sort of just do things and hope something sticks, and that's probably not a very good approach. That's probably led us to where we are today. So when we start making decisions that are data-driven, informed by the community, I think we're actually going to move the level. The other thing we know is that we have like 1,001 things that we need to do. I think in any organization, you know that. And we probably have the resources to do maybe about 100. So by having a dashboard and the appropriate measures, we're going to be able to focus that effort where it's going to deliver the most impact. And like anything, you know, we're not going to get it right on the first try. We're going to have to iterate, and that's part of the process, and that's part of being agile, again, which is something we don't do a lot in government. A lot of the times, I think there's a bit of fear that we all have if we do something the wrong way. Maybe we're going to get a lot of pushback from the community, maybe a bad article in the newspaper. But really what I've seen is that when we try new things, the community actually appreciates it, and they see that we're trying to do new things and move the needle. And then by having the accountability of the KPI dashboard, we can prove what's working and what's not. And I think that's a great way to do government, because that's definitely how it works in the private sector. So I just wanted to maybe touch, there's about, I think, a dozen or so high-level objectives in our dashboard. And I wanted to focus on community safety. So community safety is one of those, and underneath there's other sub-KPIs. So the big overall objective for community safety, and this is a mouthful, of course, and it's certainly written in a way, but it's Langley City wants to foster a thriving, safe, and resilient urban environment by integrating inclusive governance, proactive risk reduction, coordinated well-being support, vibrant public spaces, and adaptive infrastructure. That is a mouthful, but that's okay, and it doesn't really matter because we want to drill down into some of the actual lower tiers, and that's where things are going to matter. But before I get to that, I want to say why community safety is important. Well, number one, it's a key priority we hear from businesses and our citizens. And one of the things we're really trying to do at the city is shift from the reactive nature of how we do community safety today to a more proactive approach. And so we want to see really a reduction in that use of emergency services and move that to more proactive services and really restore public trust in our system. The work of this is being informed, of course, by the Citizens Assembly. So within the community safety sphere, there's probably going to be about a dozen or so metrics that we're going to be measuring, but we're going to pick 3 or 4. That's the focus, and that's going to be our high-level KPIs that we're going to expect all of our staff at the city and management to be looking at and monitoring and checking in. So the Citizens Assembly itself, through the data panel that's also working with them, which is an expert panel out of it's out of the University of the Fraser Valley, is working with us to refine those metrics. So with the metrics, like I said earlier, what we're trying to do is measuring them. If they don't work, then we're going to go back and figure out why and try to change that and come up with something. So again, departments will be evaluating these metrics continually. They will be talking with the leadership. If it's going a good way, we'll continue to go on with that. If things need refinement, we're going to check and say, hey, are we actually measuring the right thing? If not, we're going to try to measure the right thing. And then we're going to work, again, to find new plans and procedures, check in with the community to make sure that makes sense, and then move forward with that, rinse and repeat. So I wanted to touch on some of the sub-KPIs in the community safety. So this one here is streamlining crisis response. So the objective of this KPI is to divert non-emergency calls from police to coordinated crisis response teams that include mental health, housing, and social service professionals. We selected this because we received community feedback that we really do need to reduce the response of police service and shift that where it's going to actually have the most impact. In our community, we know there's a lot of social challenges, which is kind of, I think they call it comorbid with mental health, housing instability. And this approach, we believe, is going to build trust. It's going to improve the efficiency so it can actually connect people to the services they need and reduce police calls to service, because when you're calling 911, that's probably the most expensive response that you can make. So the measures for this are going to be 2. One of them is the response time for non-emergency calls to make sure they're being handled and people are getting connected in an efficient way. And the other measure that we're going to use is the utilization rate of these non-crisis response services to see if people are going to be using more and more of that. Again, just to summarize, we really do want to reduce reliance on emergency services. So the next one that I wanted to touch on is safer public spaces. And I think this one goes without saying. We all want a community where people feel comfortable walking down the street at night, going on a stroll with their family, let their kids ride their bike down the street. That's everything what we want. Personally, my mom is moving here from Kelowna, so I want to make her feel safe when she's going from her apartment at 203rd at the roundabout to the No Frills. So that's my direct connection to why this is important. So why this objective? Besides my mom, we've heard from the community that they do want to feel safe, and it's something that council wants to do as well. And we also know that we can create healthier communities where people get to know their neighbors, get to build those informal relationships, where when you actually look at the data, it increases people's happiness, it actually increases their life expectancy and lowers their stress and mental health. So this is a very, very important metric. And the other thing that's part of this that we're doing is looking at how we activate our public spaces, because when we know that we do that, we reduce crime and we reduce negative activities. So our measures for this are simple. We're going to be measuring the crime rate in our public spaces. We're going to be measuring the utilization level of our public spaces. So that's like foot traffic or the amount of programming in our parks. And again, the goal is to continue to improve the feedback we receive on safety from members of our community. So this process is like at the ground level, and we're launching a beta this month. We know that it's not going to be perfect, and it's going to be refined over the coming years, but this is the direction we're taking to make more data-informed decisions on how, and this metric, how we can create a safer community. But there's other metrics here too, like how we reduce risk and crashes on our streets. I'll save that for another day. Look, it's more data. So who doesn't like data and dashboards? We certainly love it in the city. So at the same time, we've also launched a new data visualization tool. And this is more business focused. So I know a lot of times people might be looking to put together business plans, looking to figure out the amount of people that are in a specific trade area. There's just a lot of reasons why you need access to data, and sometimes it can be hard to find. You might have to go deep into the, dark recesses of the Statistics Canada website. No one wants to go there. You might have to go to Metro Vancouver. You might have to go to the city's dashboards that we had in the past. It's just all over the place. And one of the things that we heard from our Economic Development Committee is that we really need sort of a central clearinghouse for this data. So we created that. And this is very different than the KPI dashboard, which again, the KPIs is meant to sort of drive our community, aligning our strategic goals with the actual work plans, where this is just a dashboard for the business community to pull out information they need, or folks that are just really interested in data anyways, to find out about the city. So one of the cool things we saw on council is that you can pull up a list of every single business and where they're located. So if you're trying to find how many sushi restaurants there are in Langley, you can plot that up and see it on a map. And that's not really like a joke, it's actually really important. So you can find, maybe there's a gap in a certain amenity in the city, and you might be able to provide that, and you can use this tool to find it. So I'm pretty excited about that. So some of the things that are available is like population demographics, housing, business activities, and our community services and infrastructure. I think it's pretty easy. I know I'm not showing it to you right now, but you can find it on the Langley City's website. It's also, like I said, able to help not just businesses, but even nonprofits. So there's going to be data there that can help with your grant writing and reporting, because I know that's another very important thing, and I know we have a very healthy and thriving nonprofit sector in our community. So I just wanted to share just another example of some of the information that you can find up at our new visualization tool. And again, we'll share a code, and then you can look at it later. So the other thing for Langley City that's important, and it's important for our council, is investing in the basics. It's not super sexy stuff, but it's really, really important to ensure that the citizens and the businesses have the core things they need to thrive. So in 2024, we invested about $17 million on the roads, water, sewer, and other infrastructure projects. And a lot of these wouldn't have been possible without the support of other levels of government like TransLink in the province. So for example, in 2024, we received $1.2 million from TransLink. So I just wanted to highlight some of the projects that we're doing that are over $1 million, and there's a bit of color coding here. So the blue ones are the projects that we completed this year. I believe the yellow ones are the ones that are on the way, and the red ones are ones that we're going to start real soon. So the blue ones, I just wanted to highlight a few things. So if you look in the south part of our neighborhood, there's a $3 million project there. That's a neighborhood where we replaced all the aging water pipes and repaved the whole neighborhood. That was desperately needed. In preparation for SkyTrain, if you go on Fraser Highway, there is a $4.15 billion project to replace the water service there and just repave the road. We wanted to get that out of the way before major construction starts on Industrial Avenue for the SkyTrain project. And then Michaud Crescent, we did a $2 million project, again, to replace the water. We repaved the road, and we also put in some bike lanes, which you all know that I really love. So the yellow is stuff that's on the way. Obviously, the biggest project is the Fraser Highway one-way renewal for $19 million. And that one is, really special because we're replacing basically the original downtown, this side of the Fraser River here. It's over 100 years old. The interesting stuff they've dug up, I actually saw the wood stave pipe. That was the storm sewer that's under there. It's just amazing that it actually lasted this long, but really we did need to replace this infrastructure. There was asbestos concrete pipes, like I said, wood stave pipes, which is crazy that it actually was still in service, and then porcelain pipes for sewer. So it was sort of a ticking time bomb, and we really needed to deal with that. At the same time, we're going to take the opportunity to improve the public realm there, knowing that SkyTrain is about like 2 minutes from there, and it's going to be, I think, really amazing. I'm from the Okanagan, and it's I know that we're better than Kelowna, but I think it's going to be pretty awesome like Burrard Street. So where you can have those patios out, people just enjoying the sun, the folks can have their wares from their shops out. We really designed it so that we can bring the stores into the public realm, because I think that's going to create a really good dynamic, and hopefully it's going to attract people into those businesses as well. So that was a key thought process in some of the sidewalk design and urban realm there. Other thing on the go is the Douglas Rec Center, so that's a $5 million restoration. With that, we're also putting in childcare spaces, and that is in thanks to the provincial government and the partnership we have with them. And the other one that we have underway, or will be starting shortly, is renewing the water mains under 200th Street between 44th and 50th. I know it's going to be a pain for traffic, but it is stuff that needs to get done, and it's a $3.2 million project. Some projects that will be started shortly or into next year. We are going to be putting in some new multi-use paths on the Langley bypass between 56th Avenue and where the Safeway is at Fraser Highway and the 208th Street Causeway. That's going to help make a more safe way for, and that's not the joke about the grocery store, but it's going to make it easier for, there's a lot of seniors that actually live east of 200th Street. And I remember Councillor James and I were actually at a strata. I think they just invited us. It's a very active strata. And they were so excited to hear that they'd be able to safely use their scooters and walk across the street because of that investment. It's also going to help the students connect to LSS in a safe way. So I'm excited about that. The other thing we've been trying to do for a real long time is the Grade Crescent multi-use path. So that's actually coming finally. That's another thing we've heard from the community that they desperately want. It's going to make it safe for kids to get to HD Stafford and just for people to explore the community. And there's some much needed drainage upgrades that has to happen. So I think we're probably going to talk with Corey about Fraser Highway as well. So I will save that for the Q&A. But what I will say, though, is that without the support and the feedback from the business community, I know it's tough, and I acknowledge that, but if it wasn't for their advice and tips, the communication and the good relations we have with them, I think it would be tougher. So we've basically had to have a business liaison committee that meets regularly. There's business walk-ins through both the city and I believe the contractor. I think the BIA also was awarded something from the BC BIA for the extraordinary work that they did in promoting the downtown through the construction. The city, of course, has provided extra parking in front of Tim's and City Hall. I think the most important thing we can do over the next little bit is just continue to support local and just know that there's tons of free parking in downtown Langley City that's available. We're doing our part. The project is on time and on budget, and it will be open by Arts Alive. No ifs, ands, or buts. So that's going to be really amazing to see that open, and we'll have a nice celebration and launch. I was talking to Francis, maybe we're trying to get a car from 1955 from Preston's GM. They don't know about it yet, but we're going to ask them for that because I think it would be pretty cool and appropriate to kick that off. So I just kind of wanted to wrap up with a couple of takeaways. So in Langley City, we know that the only way that we're going to create a safer community and move the needle on safety is when we engage with the community, right? When we listen to them, when we take their advice, and we drive alignment, because they're the ones that are going to help us break the status quo and really challenge us to do things that might be uncomfortable for us politicians. And we're going to continue to reach out and meet people where they're at instead of expecting them to come to us. We're going to continue to invest in the basics. Those are things that need to get done, making sure if there's water and sewer and roads, that our parks are in good shape, because if you don't have the basics right, you really shouldn't be focusing on other things. And we're going to continue to build a city that's inclusive, resilient, and ready for the future. We know that SkyTrain is coming. So look at that. I made it by 48 cue cards, and I think in 12 minutes. So looking forward to the questions with Corey. Thank you.
As well.
Awesome.
There we go.
I have all the data because I know you asked the hard-hitting questions.
There we go. Yeah. Well, hey, I appreciate you taking the time to come out and join us for this. And obviously you give us an overview of some of the things that the city's working on, and then I think more engaged community, more data-driven decisions. I mean, that's the way we want government to make decisions. You kind of were wrapped up on the Fraser Highway One. Why don't we start there? If you don't know, it's right out here on the doors. It's open. Businesses are there. I was down at the Cozy Bean earlier this week getting coffee and some baked goods. I know we have Food by Fantas here. Make sure you go. I need to come by for the the flour dumplings. Those are always my favorite. The one way is open, so please support the businesses there. It's not that hard. There's lots of parking all around it. You can't drive right down it right now, but there's lots of parking around there. So please make sure you're going there. For people who haven't looking at the renderings, haven't been following this, because this has been on the radar in the hopper for a number of years. Can you explain really briefly, like, why are we doing all of this? Like, what are we going to get out of this at the end? Obviously, pipes and things. I mean, there's lots of pipes being built. It's important. That's the most fun thing. So why are we going through such type of hassle and so much pain? And what do we think is going to be the result of the end?
Yeah. So like I said, I think the actual key reason we're doing this is because we have pipes that are older than, practically the Confederation of Canada. So that's really important that we fix. And that's the key of this whole project. And since we have to dig up the whole road, we might as well do improvements to the pedestrian or the public realm as well. So the key things I touched on in the presentation, again, we're getting wider sidewalks. And so that's going to allow more foot traffic. And again, it's going to allow the businesses to come out to the street. We see that today. I think when you look at vibrant spaces, there's a market there, so you can go and get your fresh produce. And when you look at how that store's come up to the street front, it's activated the street and it's made it like a really awesome and amazing place. It's kind of given a bit of a commercial drive vibe. And I know people just go there to experience it. So I think the more we can do that, the better it's going to be to attract even more people and more businesses to the area.
And you mentioned the city's liaison committee. I'm on that, and it has been an opportunity to bring concerns on signage or access and things to the city and then to the contractor. Beyond using a committee like that, have there been lessons that you think the city's learned from this project that will inform kind of how you do these things in the future?
I think there's always lessons to be learned. This one, I think we're still gathering the data, so I don't have anything that I can share specifically.
Yeah, we're not done yet,
because we're not done the project yet. But certainly a key takeaway early on is just, that ongoing engagement with the business community, the continual check-ins, just, if there are small things that we can do to make it better, let's do that. So I know there was some, I think one of the real interesting things we were able to do, or B&B was able to do, is we didn't really plan on being able to put parking on the east side of Fraser Highway, but B&B was able to do temporary parking there and get that opened up a little bit earlier than we expected and getting that cleared out. So that's one of the things that we were able to do and hearing from the business community and the lesson learned.
Yeah. And obviously, I mean, you mentioned, it goes without saying, it's been a hell of a challenge for the businesses there, especially this session we're in now, because it's been 2 phases. This phase is the challenging one because you see the one way and it looks closed. So it's hard in that sense. Do you have comments? How do you, as a decision maker, balance this need? You're mentioning your map's all pipes and paving and things. How do you balance the need for infrastructure when you know the negative impact it's going to have on businesses or on residents? How do you make sure that you're making the right decisions on those types of conflicts?
Yeah, I mean, any major construction in a dense commercial area is going to cause disruption, and we know that. And so that's why we've been planning this. I think it started when I was on my first term on council, and I'm on my 3rd term on council now. And when we did the construction of the project too, we tried to time it in the least worst time, right? So, we made sure it didn't happen at Christmas and during that shopping season. We know that that's really important for a lot of retailers. So we started it in January. We know that's generally a slower time. We wanted to get this done as soon as possible. So, when we looked at the plan, what we decided as a council was what's the quickest way we can get this done? Because there was other options of like partial openings and this and that. And we're like, oh, that's just going to be even worse. We just kind of want to get it done as quick as possible and have the whole thing open.
And we'll move on to another topic here. I know we're not through it yet, but I'm sure you've heard stories. I can share anecdotes with you all day long. Do you think the city's done a good job on what it could have done? Is there more the city could have done, knowing the impact it was going to have on the businesses? Is there more the city could have done as a government to smooth that over or to support them?
I don't think so. I mean, there's probably something, because there's always something, but. every one of these large projects is tricky, and we know that it causes challenges, right? And I'm not, going to make any bones about that. So the thing is to communicate it, and I believe we communicated it very early to the businesses. We know that some businesses were also pretty proactive in some of the things they did, like, oh, can you do some entrances perhaps in the alley? Can you put some signs off? Can you go and, go on social media and let your customers know, hey, there's parking available. I know we provided, or I think the DLBA provided like tear-out sheets that they could give out just so, hey, here's where the parking is, right? And then I think for our part as a community, just, advertising that it's still open for business.
The other main theme I picked up from your presentation there was public safety. A lot of the data you're doing is driven on that. A lot of the work of the Citizen Assembly. The challenge, and we see this on the one way, we see this across the community. The challenge of the property crime and street disorder are top of mind for our businesses. We hear it a lot. And I think sometimes, crime. The challenge with crime is it's not, we're not talking gangland shootings and these types of things. We're talking about grinding street disorder and property crime and things impacting you on a day-to-day basis. But there does seem to be a change in the wind. Federal on both policy side, safe supply has changed. Premier Eby's gone from being BC civil liberties to wanting secure care, for goodness sakes. And we're looking at another go at federal bail reform. There seems to be all sorts of governments, all levels and stripes are changing how they approach to this. Is the city's approach changing? You mentioned the current approaches aren't working. I made a note of you saying that. So what's the city going to be doing differently to address this that isn't what we've been trying 100 times before?
Yeah, so I think the thing that we haven't been trying before is a lot of the preventative side. We talk a lot about it, but we're not actually doing it. And a lot of it's because we're just trying to find things, like I was saying, that we kind of throw it at the wall and see what will stick. So the one example for me is I just call them the alphabet teams. So at one time, we were told, we're going to have this, and this is not diminishing the great work they're doing, obviously, but there was an ACT team and a IAS team and Heart, and there's just so many different teams out there, and it's we'll just try these things and see what will work, and that's just a bad way of doing business. So that's why we are actually going and saying, okay, based on the expert opinions that we've seen, based on our community's experience, what is it that we actually need to do to be more proactive? That's going to be the key to it. And once we have all that information, we have the alignment of our community and our local level, it's going to be a little bit easier to go to the provincial government or federal government and say, hey, we need this, and here's the reason why. There's another interesting thing that's actually launching in Langley City and Township, because they look at it as sort of one unit from the healthcare perspective, and that's called coordinated access. Mm-hmm. And I know we've been pretty busy with that in the city perspective. And that's basically a way of, so when a lot of people have issues, they might go to one service provider and have to tell their story, and maybe or maybe not they'll get help. And then maybe they have to go and talk to someone else, or maybe they're like, oh, we're busy, call us back in 3 days. And when you're looking for help and you're someone with complex needs, that's a recipe for disaster. Yeah. So with the coordinated access program, there's basically you enter whatever you go to first enters the data for you. They track you, they connect you with the other services. So we actually start looking at an approach that's centered on the person and making it easier to get that person connected, and they're actually tracking the results. So I think that's one of the exciting things for us that we're seeing. I understand that BC Housing is coming to this system in Langley on August 18th. So it's, again, really encouraging for me to see the work that we're trying to do on the proactive side on getting this together, and that Langley's a pilot community for this.
You mentioned, and I'm sorry for being dim, but you mentioned the new crisis teams and trying to get less calls going to RCMP and police first, and using these new crisis teams. Aren't those kind of the iHearts and the B dots and the ABC? Isn't that kind of what we've been trying? Is this idea that we have these other crisis teams there? Is this different than what we've been trying before? Because it kind of sounded like what we've
that goes
down
to
this
that
road.
Coordinated access that's being launched, and that's one of the exciting things that I'm kind of one of the many things that we could do. Or and this is not Langley, by the way, or Langley City taking credit for that, but there's also when you need mental health, do you call the police, or they're actually talking about sort of mental health press, police, fire, ambulance, mental health. So these sorts of things that I think are going to be helpful.
Yeah. So when in that not to belabor the point, but in that slide when you're talking about new crisis teams in Langley City, are those actual like positions that Langley City is creating?
Maybe it shouldn't be like new crisis teams, but it's actually just getting people connected to the right resources.
Okay.
That may already exist in the community.
Okay. The looking at I guess on public safety, I mean, they're complex issues, and you talk about kind of being more proactive and in that sense. What does that mean from the public safety perspective, and what can you do in that sense that's even in your remit? I mean, at some level, we're all going to go back to the province and saying we need more housing, mental health, all these other things. So can we expect much of the outcomes if we're looking at trying to be more proactive? And that's for the business community, not to speak on their behalf on all the time, but often we feel like we kind of got that, whether it was the 4 pillars, whatever you call it about, we always talked about all these different things, but we kind of never did any of them. How is this different than, I mean, at the city level, you can't do anything on mental health. You can't really do too much in these spaces because it's not your jurisdiction, right?
Right. So when we talk about, there's roles that all levels of government can play. Let's talk about street disorder, because you kind of mentioned that for a little bit. So one of the things that communities do have control over is how we program our public spaces. And that has a very big impact on disorder. So I can think of Douglas Park, for example. I think that's a really great example of the work done there. And this is not like when I was first elected and look at all this, but like when I was first elected there, I remember being at some neighborhood meetings where people were talking about like needles and people just doing a lot of negative activities in that park. And so we were intentional over successive councils of being more proactive in programming that space. We have pickleball there. And actually, I kind of smiled because I got a complaint today that people were annoyed at the pickleballers. So I'm like, we've mission accomplished. We're the #1 issue in Douglas Park is pickleball, right?
We'll take that over needles, yeah.
Right? And the other thing that we're doing, there is a derelict site where the Langley Hotel was. So there's pickleball courts there, basketball courts are coming. Certainly not everything is perfect, but when I was just coming there was a dad and his little kid playing pickleball there. And again, the apartment dwellers were complaining about pickleball, but again, that's a lot better than some of the other challenges that existed in that neighborhood. So there are things that we can do at a local level that can complement the work. So we can do positive things in our public spaces, but also acknowledge that the folks that were there still actually do need supports and help and housing and all of that.
And obviously, I mean, we're talking about public safety. I know that they're intertwined, but I mean, crime goes next to that, and next to crime is policing. So I do want to touch on, obviously, there was this issue last month that came up with the ending of the co-owned agreement with the detachment building. Can you catch us up to speed on what the status of this is? I mean, if that agreement on the detachment isn't there, where are Langley City RCMP members now? I mean, I'm assuming they're not just driving around looking for somewhere to park. So what's our status for where our RCMP members are going to be stationed, and are we building a new detachment in Langley? Is there any update on this?
Yeah, so I guess there's 2 things I will say. One, the city's position is on our website, and I think that's the best place for people to get the information. And right now, there's no operational change to the Langley RCMP.
I want to move talking on websites. I was on your website the other day and looking at, and you had talked about a policy position at the city around housing as a human right, I think it was. And housing is an issue that comes up all the time. Obviously, it's an issue for people. Where are they going to live? For our business community, if workers have to live further and further afield, it's harder and harder to get them to work in Langley because they're not here. What can you point to? What would you point to as kind of the things that the city's doing to make sure that we're getting the right kind of housing, both in form and price point, I guess is the way to say it, to satisfy like our housing needs here in Langley? What would you pinpoint as kind of the actions you and council have taken to help get the housing that we need?
Yeah, so we have our housing needs report, and we also have provincial housing targets or orders. There's 2 of them, and that sort of dictates what the province would love us to see get built. But from the city's perspective, we do have, I think, a diversity of housing choices that people can build in our community. We are also subject to transit-oriented area legislation as well, which actually kind of aligns with our existing official community plan. So basically anything north of the river, is what you kind of see today, but over time I think you'll see higher densities. In the south of the river area, council's official community plan was to increase density along the 200th and 208th Street corridors, build commercial nodes at 200th Street near Grade and 208th Street where the Town and Country Church is. Kind of looked at where church sites were and thought that would be good opportunities to see redevelop over time. So that's kind of what we're trying to do, is encourage sort of the highest densities around the SkyTrain, increased density along the 200th and 208th Street corridors. We know that there's good transit service today on 200th. There's plans for higher order transit service in the future. We know that there's great plans down in Brookswood and Fern Ridge and over to White Rock and Campbell Heights. So that's just going to be a growth opportunity, and that's going to become a really important transit corridor in the future.
And we hear lots about the provincial rules. Is there going to be much of an impact in Langley? Because I mean, your OCP, that triangle by the Willowbrook station was supposed to be very, very dense anyways, and the downtown or the core where the station is just over here was kind of going to be dense then. So were you seeing much change in your planning when the province came in with their new rules?
So I think I think if we're getting into the nuts and bolts of it, and I think we were, is the difference between what they call inclusionary zoning and density bonusing. So.
I did want to ask about that.
Yeah, so that's the big
kind
change.
of density bonus goes out the window if the province has already said you have to do it anyways, right?
Right. So we can talk about inclusionary zoning and density bonusing, and it's sort of like two sides of the same coin, though I'm sure people would argue with me and say they're not. But it's a way to be able to get amenities, and in this case, more affordable housing. And for the context of Langley City, we're defining that as rents 20% below market rents for Langley City. So that's the metric we're using. There's all other sorts of affordability metrics you can use, but that's the one we're using. So right now, council is exploring inclusionary zoning in the transit-oriented areas because density bonusing, the airport limits our height, so we can't really do density bonusing because the TOA area is higher than the airport height restrictions. So inclusionary zoning is non-optional, and it says that a percentage of housing has to be, like in our case, that 20% or below market rents. So just some of the numbers we're working on, and I was told by staff I can say this, we're looking at about 2 to 2.5% of the housing stock as far as new developments for that inclusionary zoning. We're going out to consultation with the development community to see if that makes sense. For density bonusing, it's a lot higher, and there are areas north of the Nickel-Mackle where that's possible. And I think that was maybe around the 10 to 15% range, and that's optional. So we're trying to make sure that we're getting that affordable housing, but also setting it at a rate that's not going to break the bank for development. Yeah. And we've intentionally set that to what they call, I guess we can really get into the weeds, but I'll say this. When you look at the total package of the cost to develop in Langley City, when you compare us to our neighbors, we're comparable. We're actually a little bit lower when you look at the total fees. So we looked at that to make sure we're not doing something like sky high and out of reach.
Well, I don't want to tell you this, we're seeing that across the region have developed, and I was at an event last night with a whole bunch of developers, and people are letting lots are sitting fallow, people aren't moving on development because the market's hard to bear, so when you add things to that. Do you have any, and this is philosophical, and you can brush me off if you want, but is there any philosophical discussions around, like when we do inclusionary zoning, if I'm going to build 100 units and sell them, if I have to now take 2.5% of them or up to 10% of them and make them less profitable, doesn't the other 85% become more expensive? And aren't then the new people who are moving into Langley, the young families, subsidizing the lower cost units? Isn't that just how it has to work?
Yeah, so when you look at the academic research on it, it is like a mixed bag. So you'll see in some reports where they say it will have an increase in the cost of housing, not significantly, unless you have ridiculous inclusionary zoning, in which case you might actually not get anything built at all. Minimal impacts to no impacts depending on the study. But yeah, there is a philosophical discussion to be had. One of them is, no inclusionary zoning or any of these things, just let people build, right? And then there you go. And the other one is, government has a role to play in providing affordable housing, basically.
Yeah. I was watching this, and I appreciate you coming to its defense. I guess that's probably too strong of a way to put it. But there's that BC Build site that was coming. So here's redevelopment, and the province is putting money in. The cities, I think, sold land under market, 60 below market rental suites. But then you had a big blowback from the community. Too much traffic, too much this, too much that. How do you as a decision maker, how do you balance everyone in one ear telling you we need more growth, we need more affordable housing, we need more housing, and then when you have a project like this, people come out of the woodwork and oppose it?
Yeah, so I mean, I think council did a lot of consideration on this one, and it was a change for the neighborhood. And, we figured it would have been, or at least I figured that it would have been a significant change regardless. The original plan in the OCP, where it was just, no affordable housing, no childcare, was like a 3-story limit. This is 6. But we also got pushback in 208th Street for a 6-unit townhouse complex as well. That was pretty significant. So when we introduced the density there was actually community surveys that we did beforehand. And we know that the majority of residents in our community are supportive of this, but certainly it is a big change, right? And when you have people come to the public hearing and write the letters, you don't blow them off. I mean, it's a big change. It's a fear of the unknown as well. And there are valid concerns that people raise that we need to address. So one example of that was the concerns about, this is really getting, again, in the weeds, but really important, and council directed staff to make a change. So these things are important. So there was an entrance on 50th Avenue for this project, and it would have had a left turn in and out. And looking at that, people are like, well, this is on a hill and the sight lines are a bit weird. And I know we had a member of council plunk a chair down and watch that intersection for a day. We actually had a couple members of council do that, and I think that's one of the cool benefits of Langley City. We're 10 square kilometers, so we have the ability to really laser focus on these things, including on an aside where we put dog waste cans too. That's something that I know keenly where they should be.
We're not going that far.
But we're not going to that level of detail today. But I observed it. I know majority of council went there, and they're like, yeah, you know what? That doesn't make sense, and we made that change. There was some design concerns about the environmental impacts. So again, we talked to staff and said, hey, we need to do more to mitigate those environmental impacts directly in that neighborhood, and that was changed as part of the plan. So, sometimes it might not seem that council's listening or that, it's just a bunch of NIMBYs, but there's always really important things to glean from this. And I think as long as you're listening and trying to make changes where you can, and knowing the overall direction that people want to see the community is going, I think that's the right thing to do. And it is difficult. And I think when you're moving things forward, you have these inflection points that are difficult.
Yeah, well, and I just think for you and council, I mean, with SkyTrain coming in, and we're going to see this turnover. We're going to see these are going to be conversations we're having across the community. We're going to have density. We're going to have growing pains. I always tell people, growing pains are better than shrinking pains. My family's up the coast where the mill shuts down and everyone leaves. So I mean, those are you have to figure how do you bridge those gaps and bring the community along with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess from a business perspective, you're increasing the amount of people in your trade area, so that's a good thing.
Well, and that's what I mean. We need businesses. If we're building, we need to be building more commercial spaces. If we want to have cool boutiques and restaurants be successful, we can't drop them in a single-family home area. They need residents around them. So from our perspective, yeah, we need to have this growth. But we talk about this every year, rightly so, I think, from the business community, on budgets and taxes and finances and all that kind of fun stuff. How well do you think the city is managing its property tax burden on businesses and residents? I know that we talk about this all the year. We always make submissions. Everyone knows the numbers and the tax increases. I know there's been in the news people floating tax freezes in other municipalities a little west of here. What's the balance? What's the conversation at the council table? I'm sure you and staff and council and staff are having these conversations between the services we'd like, the things we'd like to do, and 9, 10, 11, 12% tax increase. I mean, how are you making those decisions? How are you balancing that so that we're staying competitive and with cost of living in mind?
Yeah, so again, one of the sort of, there's a lot of people like, if it was one big Metro Vancouver, it would be easier or whatever. But one of the interesting things is because we have 21 municipalities, we're all looking at each other and whose tax rates are what. So I think that's actually really good because it creates a bit of a healthy competition in a lot of ways that you wouldn't see.
Accountability there.
Well, seriously, because in Calgary, what's the comparison for Calgary's property tax, right? Here, again, it's very competitive. People really like highlighting where their taxes are or are not, right? I know Port Coquitlam is famous for their advertising of their supposed lowest tax rates in Metro Vancouver, even though Langley City actually has a lower residential tax rates for multifamily than Port Coquitlam, but that's okay. But yeah, taxes are definitely something that's really important for the community and for our council that we discuss. But it's really interesting when you look at the kinds of communication I receive from businesses in a day-to-day. So certainly, every year I do get an email or two, and I'm literally saying an email or two about commercial taxation in Langley City. And when I get it, it's usually like oh my goodness, my taxes went up like 30%. And that's not our tax rate. That's the thing I shared last year with it being all over the place. Like I received an email from an individual actually yesterday, because they're like, oh, my taxes went up 18%. Our tax rate was 6.97 this year. So those are the things to explain. But what I actually get a lot of is about how come it's taking so long to process my permit? Can you speed it up? Why do you have this arcane thing in our zoning bylaw that won't let me do X? And so that's the actual, when I think of all the meetings that I have on a day-to-day, that's what I get in my office. So what we're trying to really do is cut down that red tape, because more than property tax, so if you get jammed up at City Hall and delay, that's where you're going to be losing a lot of money. So, in the city, we're introducing, on the development side, digital processing, which is like something I know that it seems like, okay, wow, actual digital. We're not doing things on CD-ROMs and USB sticks anymore, and doing paper copies. And that's going to speed up the ability to do plan checking. In our zoning bylaw, we're doing a massive update on that. So the last major update of our zoning was done in 1996. I was in grade 6 at the time. Windows 95 was the cool new operating system with MSN Online. So that's just maybe a throwback to that era. So it's in need of an update. And I remember talking to Councillor Solium. I'll put him on the spot. We went to a arcade in Westminster, and we heard the heck of a time they had just to be able to serve alcohol at their site. And, that's the kind of red tape that slows down business. So our zoning bylaw, we're really trying to be really liberal in what we're allowing in commercial spaces so that we don't end up with these weird roadblocks that prevent businesses from opening. And the other thing we're doing is called like the innovation district, but we're looking at our industrial and commercial areas. Do they have the right servicing and needs to be able to support the kind of diversity of businesses? Again, like just a weird one. If you're in a brewery, you need like 3-phase power, and you need certain sewer stuff, and those are the sorts of things that are really important for business. I think the other thing that's very, very important to business, at least from the retail side, is looking at your top line and increasing foot traffic and creating desirable places for people to come. So if you look at Metrotown Shopping Center and the lease rate there per square foot, and say Langley Mall just over there, I'm going to assume it has a much lower lease rate. There's a reason why Metrotown can command a high lease rate and have very successful businesses there, because they have a lot of foot traffic. It's a destination that people want to come to. So as a city, and this goes back to that activating public spaces, some of the work we're doing on the Fraser Highway one-way, the wider sidewalks, the street activation, we're really working hard to create what is already a destination and a regional destination to be even more so, understanding that SkyTrain's literally 2 minutes to the door. So if we can get people to come down and shop in Langley City, or if we're in the industrial areas where we now have the ability for workers to be able to come to our community, making it easier for those businesses to find the employees, I think these are the things we can do as a community that's actually going to move the needle to make businesses thrive.
We mentioned SkyTrain. Why don't we jump to a couple questions on that? I know we're galloping towards time here. When the project opens, Langley City is going to have a station right over here. I think so. I've lost my bearings in what direction we're pointing. There we go. Thank you. What are the plans in place now? How far in advance is the city working? Whether you're working with SkyTrain, with TI Corp, with the RCMP, on making sure that when that station opens, that it's accessible for people. That I know there's concerns around what that might mean for crime and people coming and going. That we don't have all of Abbotsford just parking their cars and jumping on the SkyTrain. How are you making sure that what's the planning going on right now to make sure that station is a success when we look back on it?
Yeah, I mean, there is a ton of planning that's going into that SkyTrain station, the Langley City Center SkyTrain station. So there's a I guess there's a couple of things to unpack there, but one of the things we were able to negotiate with TI Corp, or the provincial government, was really to provide design feedback on it and go through our advisory design panel, which involves our community members and professionals to provide advice. So a couple of unique things about that station. From an accessibility standpoint, I think it's the only one on the line that's center loading and has 2 elevators, so that's really important. I think it also has a commercial unit underneath, so that's really good, eyes and ears. It has a washroom, that's something that's been a high demand request. And it also has I think, and Francis can tell me if I'm wrong, there's a transit police thing there as well. And that was something that was really important for the city. We worked with our planning department to make sure that it's going to have a really good public plaza today. But also that it's designed, because we know there's going to be apartments and other commercial uses over time, that it's going to be easy to add those to kind of front the station over time. And so from the crime perspective, it again goes back to those programmings of the public spaces. So if we bring those positive activities there, it's going to make a big difference. I was talking with the RCMP this morning, and I was reminded, I said, so, what's been the success of the SkyTrain stations, where there's problems, where there's not? And he told me, where the neighborhoods are already successful and are doing good things to try to reduce crime, then SkyTrain will be fine. If there's areas where it's already in a rough state, it just kind of highlights it, right? So I think and I'm not gonna, I'm gonna give you a positive story. So Surrey Central, right? Surrey Central is a pretty rough place, even 10 years ago. But I know Surrey Council of the Day made that choice to build City Hall there. There's a choice to build that library there. KPU is there, SFU is there. And it's really changed the area, and that's because of how they program the public space.
SkyTrain, it'll be run by TransLink when it's, TI Corp's building, it'll be run by TransLink when it's running. Recently, you voted for the new funding transportation investment plan from TransLink, which was, we had the sword dangling over us that they're going to cut all of Langley's bus service if we didn't get the money. What's your take on how we should be funding transit in our region, and how do you and what can you do on behalf of Langley City to make sure that we're getting our fair share? Because I think the challenge is, and I fight with TransLink all the time on this, and we had Kevin Desmond on the stage, and we made the argument, and he didn't agree, that it's better to have service all over get better service across the space, as opposed to finer and finer grain service in somewhere like Burnaby or Metrotown, which already has amazing service. I mean, Langley has always been underserved for transit. So when you're on these committees, when you're speaking on behalf of Langley City, how do we fight to make sure that we're getting the investment in these services that we need here?
So there are 2 questions there, one about how we fund it, and then how we get service in Langley.
Well, I think they're all, you can't get service without funding. So I mean, how do we solve it so we don't keep having this $600 million thing holding over us until the last minute? And then how do we make sure that when they do get funding, that those dollars are actually coming to Langley and not going somewhere else?
Absolutely. So this is just my personal opinion, but remember that discussion about the sales tax? If that went through, we would be having no problems. And I was supportive of that at the time, but I know that's a no-go basically. So basically,
you want to talk HST too? Good Lord.
Right.
Yeah.
So really, if we get to it, we all come up with very creative ways on what sort of taxes, whatever we want. But there's 2 things that are going to be what it's going to be at the end of the day. And I know people are, going to be like, well, whatever, and no. But it's going to be a combination of more property tax. Just no matter what we say, it's going to be a combination of more property tax, and there's going to need to be a replacement for the fuel tax. So I know I hear from the community, hey, EVs are getting a free ride, right? Maybe they need to pay a fair share of that. And I would imagine, you read the newspaper as much as I do. There's a lot of talk about vehicle levies, which interestingly was what was supposed to have been implemented in like 1999. So I think it's probably going to be a combination of property tax and fuel levy, and the provincial government and federal government giving us money in piecemeal chunks like they have done for the last 30 years. Not to be pessimistic, because we actually have developed, even with these sort of lurches and crises, when you look at transit service 20 years ago to the day, it's much better. It's much better in Langley, and I think we're the 3rd largest bus operator, or the service hours or something, in all of Canada and the US now. So those investments, while they're piecemeal, while it's not perfect, we are actually moving the needle forward slowly but surely, and certainly for Langley and in the south of Fraser in general, we've seen massive increases in transit ridership. It's been double digit.
Yeah.
Well, at the same time, there's actually been decrease in transit ridership in places like Vancouver, and we see that. And it's just making sure. And I think, our region's been united. I mean, the transit vision that was voted for was a unanimous vote. And any mayor I've talked to understands the need for investment in the south of Fraser and in Langley City and Township.
I think I've probably gone over time here, so we'll wrap this up. And I appreciate you taking the time and kind of getting in. We did into the weeds and philosophical conversations,
Absolutely.
so we got everything covered there. We've got where are we here? Where it's, I don't know what date it is. It's June 2025. Are there still? I mean, you've got a bunch of things on the go. Is there still one thing on the bucket list that you wanted to get done in this term as mayor? Or are you kind of checking off your to-do list?
Yeah, so there's the one last thing that council put forward, and that's what we're calling Invest Langley City. So we understand that with growth comes the need to investment, and as I think we said somewhere, we're really going to have that conversation with the community and ask them the question in a plebiscite on what are some of the key things beyond like the water and sewer projects. We know there's recreation services and other things that people would like to see. Is that an investment they'd like to make for our community, and if so, how they'd like to pay for it?
Okay, that's interesting. And then I think I flagged with your team that I was going to ask you this, so it shouldn't catch you off guard. If we sit down here in a year's time, it's going to be we'll be right at the beginning of a campaign for the next election. Have you decided yet whether you're going to be running again?
Yeah, I'm running again. That's not a secret.
Okay.
So.
Perfect. Just wanted to get it out there. Mayor Pachal, thank you very much for taking the time going through. We covered a lot of ground there. I appreciate you coming out to the chamber and speaking and giving us an update, and thanks for taking the time to be here.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.